Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Let's get it started. Let's pray. God, we welcome you in this room this morning. We thank you for just the blessing you give us of being together, having a donut and some coffee, or maybe for those at home sitting around just with the family watching the sermon today. We just pray you'd bless us and you just speak to us, teach us something new, enlighten us to who you are and who you want us to be in light of that. In Jesus' name, everybody said. All right, we're going to finish the rest of the book of Mark today, okay? It's 9 chapters. We got this. Mark chapter 6, starting in verse 30. This is post-news of John the Baptist's killing. The disciples are returning to Jesus. Verse 31, and he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. And he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. They sat down in groups by hundreds and fifties. And taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And then they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. This is not a story that most of you are unfamiliar with. It's a popular story of Jesus. It's one of the big miracles that are in every Jesus film, and all of the renditions of the gospel. You see this story. In fact, all 4 accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, record this feeding of the 5,000. So it's not unfamiliar, but I want to take it from a little bit of a different perspective today, a bit of context, if you will. The other night, I had my 2 oldest boys with me, and it was, the girls were out, so it was just guys. And I said, "Let's go get something to eat." Loaded them in the car, which is a feat in and of itself if you're a parent. So get them in the car, where are we going? And I'm like, if I give them the decision, this could take a while. So I pull up to a place I thought, they'll have a bunch of stuff. I grew up eating this. Taco Cabana. I don't know if you're a Taco Cabana fan, but I could live just off the salsa bar, right? So I'm like, we'll get there. There's a bunch of things the kids can eat. They'll find something. So we stand there in front of the menu, and we're looking, and I'm reading it to them. Hey, we could do tacos. We could do a little burrito. You could have, we have breakfast. You can have nachos. And I'm going over it, and just the countenance of my children was just like, whoa, like they were not interested in anything. And Racer's like, "Do they have steak?" I'm like, "They have fajitas. It's steak. They just cut it up and put it in a hot pan." He's like, "I don't really want meat." I'm like, "Okay. But what about a quesadilla?" "I don't really want bread. I don't want a tortilla. And Ruckus, I don't like cheese." And I'm like, okay, so I'm looking at the lady, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry." And I load them back in the vehicle, right? I'm like, "All right, let's go, get inside." So I get in the car, I'm like, "All right, you guys pick wherever you want, I'll take you." And they say, "Let's go to Wendy's and get a cheeseburger." And I'm like, "That's bread, cheese, and meat stacked together. How is this any different?" And they were like, "Well, that's what we want." And so we go to Wendy's and we get the cheeseburger, and I'm sitting there just thinking, okay, this shouldn't be too hard. We order the thing, we sit down, and Wendy's has the Coke Freestyle. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's that Coke machine that has all of the buttons, and you can add all of the flavors. And so this was another thing. I was like, okay, what do you want? "I want Sprite." "Okay, great, Sprite. Start doing it." No, I want cherry Sprite." Okay, but I only want half of it with cherry. And I'm like going through this whole menu and doing it all, and I'm just like, Coke. I just want just plain old Coke. We sit down, and I realize how content they are with their meal, but how completely clueless they are to what they're actually eating in life. Like, it's bread and meat and cheese, and Taco Cabana has that in just different formats. Mexicans just fold our stuff in half. That's all that we do. You guys stacked it up. Why is this so different? And I thought about this story because it was on my mind for this week. How many of these people are looking and craving and desiring something from this Jesus, and they know what they want. They want satisfaction. But the vehicle in which they're going to get it comes in a shape and in a fashion that they probably weren't expecting. A little context. John the Baptist is dead. Jesus' disciples get back together. Okay, this is bad news. This is not a good situation. Let's go, Jesus says, get in the boat. Let's go to the other side. Let's find a quiet place. Let's regroup, regather. Let's rest. Let's start over here. Let's get a little fresh start. And so they go across the lake, which is something we see over and over in Mark's account. And they go across, and people start to recognize, oh, it's Jesus, it's Peter, it's Philip, it's the disciples. Let's go. And so as they get to the other side in this desert land, thousands and thousands have now gathered for Jesus. Now, you and I go, oh, okay, they're just out there in the middle of nowhere. The context is that all throughout Palestine were these young men called zealots. These were people who were going to revolt against the Roman Empire, take back Palestine, reestablish the temple in Jerusalem, and take back what God had promised their forefathers. And these zealots would often gather out in the desolate places, out in the desert. So when Jesus comes across and he ends up in the desert, ends up in the desolate place, the majority of the people there are young men who have been meeting around campfires and strategizing and planning and forging weapons and deciding how are we going to revolt against Rome. If you were a prophet, or maybe you were a zealot, or you were a military type leader, you would go there into the desolate places and rally these boys up. Let's take back what's ours. So they are craving a leader. So let's look at this verse again, verse 32. They go away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Many saw them going, recognized them, ran there on foot from all the towns, and got there ahead of them. And when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them. He's moved with compassion, but why? Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. Jesus ends up in the hill country, in the desolate place, out in the desert. He shows up on shore. He sees a multitude of gathered to receive him. And it says his heart is moved with compassion. Original language denotes something inside of his physical body began to ache. Mind you, he's mourning the loss of John the Baptist, his cousin, friend, and forerunner of him as the Messiah. He's going across the lake to get some rest. They've all been traveling. They've all been preaching, teaching, doing miracles. It's time to go get some rest. And on their way to the hotel room for the siesta, 5,000 plus people are waiting on the shore. Imagine being one of the teenage disciples. You're like, Jesus like, hey guys, let's go camping. Let's get away from all this for a few days. Let's just go let's just rest. You're tired. And they're like, finally, I feel seen and heard and understood. Thank you, Jesus. They load up the boat. They get across the other side, and they're in their campsite. They're in their resort. They're in their place that they were supposed to hide out and chill for a few days. Is a multitude of people. And their gut is wrenching because their rest is gone. And Jesus' gut is wrenching because he sees people who desire a leader, more than likely a militant, military-style leader. At one point in the book of Mark and throughout the Gospels, these are the same type of people who looked at Jesus, what he was capable of, the way that he spoke, and said, let's crown him king right here and right now. They're desiring and craving a leader, and he looks and he says, oh, they're like sheep without a shepherd. They're like kids looking at a menu. They know that they're hungry. They know what they want. They want to feel full, to feel satisfied, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know how to make all of this work. And Jesus looks at these young men The reason that it says 5,000 men is because in antiquity, they would only count the men. So there could have been women in families if they were there with them. But we know that there was at least 5,000 men, more than likely a lot of zealots and a lot of rebels who had been camping or gathering, or this is where they like to meet. And Jesus looks at them with compassion, and he begins to teach them. He sits down, he's like, okay, listen, let's just talk. So you're a zealot, and you're excited, and there's this Jesus that you've heard about. Maybe you've even seen him perform miracles. Maybe you've even heard him preach before. But you're there with all the rebels. You're there with all the people who are like-minded as you are. It is human nature, not just American human nature, but it is human nature to gather together with people who think like you and look like you. It just happens. You ever gone to like a party and you start to realize like halfway through the party that all the women are in like one area of the house doing their thing and all the guys are like outside, like they put us outside like with the kids or something, I don't know, but like it's natural. We don't plan it. It's not something that we're like, oh, okay, girls inside, guys outside. It just happens. Why? Because we like to be around things and people who look like us. Same thing the way we vote. We like to hang around and have discourse and political discourse with people who vote like us. So as we move throughout life, we have to remember these people are just humans. So everyone there is kind of like-minded. They don't like Rome. They don't like the empire. They want Palestine back. They want their country back. They want a new king. They want a leader. And here comes Jesus. To them, Jesus represents them taking back their life. Take back our land. Take back the power. Take back our country. And here comes Jesus, and he begins to teach them. Doesn't tell us what he taught them, but we could probably guess some of those back pocket sermons that Jesus carried around. Whoever wants to gain their life must what? Lose it. If you lose your life for my sake, then you will. Okay, if you want to come after me, you have to take up your cross and you have to follow. And he's giving all of these sermons. Who's the more neighborly? And he starts talking about the Samaritans, which they all hate. And he's giving these sermons. He's beginning to teach them. I wonder the confusion that began to stir up in that crowd. Like, man, I thought this guy was going to come over here. Jesus is coming to the desert. He's coming to the hill country. He's in the desolate places where he knows the zealots gather. Maybe he's finally here to rally us all together so that we can take back what's ours. And then Jesus gets up and he begins not to lead an insurrection, but to teach them with the things that Jesus often taught. Something strange happens in verse 39. Then, this is after they realize it's late, we need food. Then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and fifties. That phrase, hundreds and fifties, is a military unit. Jesus is using military-style words as he commands them to divide up into rank, make segments, make sections. And so this is, everybody group up in 50s and hundreds. And if I'm a young zealot, I'm like, here it is, man. He's going to arm us. We're going to have our direction. We're going to charge the empire ourselves. We're going to take back Jerusalem. This is amazing. And he goes, and everybody sit down. Like, what a fatherly language. Everything Jesus does in this passage is fatherly. He has compassion for them. He looks at them like little kids without a dad, sheep without a shepherd. He tells them all, sit down. He breaks bread. In antiquity, especially in Jewish antiquity, a father at mealtime would take the piece of bread, do a blessing before the family, break the bread and divide the bread, and that's how every meal begins. Jesus is this father, this leader, and he goes, okay, kids, sit down. Everyone relax. What is he saying? You want a revolutionary leader to take back what is yours. I am a revolutionary leader, but not like the one that you desire. And I am going to lead a revolution in by which you do get something. Life. You get life. They wanted a revolutionary leader to rally them all up, give them the commandments, lead a charge full of death and blood and slaughter to take back what was theirs. And Jesus comes and offers them bread, which for the Hebrews was a symbol of life. Sit down, don't stand, don't take up arms, sit, eat this, taste this. Verse 42, And they all ate and were satisfied. That's the first group of people we have to understand. These were zealots. These were people waiting for the leader, waiting to take back what was theirs, hoping Jesus was the guy to lead the charge. For them, Jesus, yes, a miracle worker and a prophet and a preacher, but more than that, Jesus could have been the political breakthrough that they had all been waiting for. Next set of characters, the disciples, verse 35. And when it grew late, the disciples came to him and said, "Hey, Jesus, we're out here in the middle of nowhere, and it's getting late. Send them away to go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." In the Greek, the emphasis is on you. So he goes, "Hey, you do it. You give them something." And he says to them, they said to him, "Well, should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread?" That's a day's wage. 200 denarii worth of bread, and give it to them to eat. And he said, "How many loaves and fish do you have? Go and see." When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. The other accounts of the Gospels give us this picture of a little boy with a happy meal, and he's got a couple of fish and loaves. And they're like, this is satire, this is sarcasm, this is disrespect to Jesus of the disciples. We came here to rest, to relax. That's why we showed up. You need to send these people away. And he goes, "No, you feed them." They go, "Jesus, all we got is this little kid, and all we have is this little tiny meal. You need to do what we're telling you and get these people out of here." And Jesus goes, "Okay, bring it to me." This is one of those loaded things because the disciples are frustrated. They see the crowds and the hour of the day, and they see a problem. Jesus sees the crowds, he's moved with compassion, and he sees potential to do and to teach and to begin something in the hearts of thousands and thousands of people. He says to them, "You do it." What Jesus is doing is he's pushing back on the disrespect of the disciples. Jesus, it's getting late. What are we supposed to do? You got to send them all away. And Jesus goes, "No, you got to feed them. Don't pawn the problem off on me. You take care of this. You handle this. You just went out and healed the blind, sick, and the lame and preached all throughout the land. You're frustrated because you're tired, and now you're trying to put this on me. No, you feed them." Their response, in the other accounts of the gospel, Philip does the math. Philip's the math guy, right? And he's like, "Oh, guys, what do we do? Philip, you're good at numbers. Like, okay, let me do some maths real quick. Okay, let's go over there and just throw some outrageous dollar amount to Jesus so that he can kind of come back down to reality here, and then he'll side with us." So they turn around, they go to Jesus like, "Hey, we're going to need 200 denarii worth just to go into town, buy all the bread that exists in the universe, just to go and feed these people. It's time, Jesus, to send them away." Translation, Philip comes back to Jesus and says, "This would take a miracle." I don't know what it is about the disciples, but they are just the most dense young men I have ever heard of. They have seen Jesus do miracle after miracle after miracle. I can gather 2 things from this. One, their faith hasn't grown yet. They still need to be in school. Yeah, they're going out and doing cool things for Jesus and saying cool things on Jesus' behalf, but they still have some growing to do. 2, they are fully aware that Jesus is capable of doing miracles. But in this moment and in their tired state, they're not interested in it at all. It's so funny. When I want something from Jesus, what others need always takes a back seat. When I want something, I want to rest. I wanted to come out here and chill with Jesus. And now all of a sudden, I'm out here, and all these people are here. Just send them away. And Jesus is like, "Well, let's feed them." And it's like, we know you can do miracles. We know this is something you don't have a problem pulling off. We just don't want that. We want what we want. It is telling of their state of mind. It is telling of their selfish desires. This is going to take a miracle. Jesus goes, "Perfect. What do you got?" "We got 5 loaves. We got 2 fish. Jesus, we don't have much. This isn't going to work." And he says, "Well, just bring that to me." He lifts it up to heaven, breaks the bread, dishes out the fish. In the original language, it says he breaks the bread and gives it to the disciples. But that word giving is in an imperfect tense, meaning it was like he continued giving. So like Jesus broke bread, lifts it up, breaks it. "Here, take this," and breaks it again. and you can have some, and breaks it again, and you can have some. And Jesus is just continually breaking bread, and the bread never really seems to run out, and the disciples are just like feeding people, and it's like, what is happening? What is happening? Multiplication and the miracle is actually physically happening in the hands of Jesus himself. It's happening right there. The Jesus films didn't do it justice. What does Jesus do? He lifts up these empty baskets, and when he pulls them down, they're full. Do you remember the Jesus films? I don't know. I grew up in a Christian household. So they lift up the empty baskets, he pulls it up, and everybody's like, oh, wow. No, they had to sit there moment by moment as they dispersed the food, and Jesus just kept breaking. Jesus just kept breaking. Jesus just kept breaking. And he kept breaking and blessing and breaking and blessing. Why? Because Jesus wanted it fully clear that it was not something that could be conjured up. I read one translation or one commentator who isn't really fond of miracles, great dude, not fond of miracles, and he said, generosity begets generosity. What happened was Jesus breaks the kid's Happy Meal, starts to share it. Everybody else goes, oh, Jesus is sharing. I got something in my fanny pack. I'll share too. So that's how everybody ate. They all just started sharing. Jesus' generosity to give what little he had inspired a multitude of people to give what they had. But the original language doesn't tell us that. It tells us that all of the multiplication was coming from the source of Jesus himself. That he is the one who's breaking and giving, breaking and blessing, breaking and blessing over and over and over. First he tells them, you do it. What do you have? We have 5 loaves and 2 fish. What is Jesus doing? He's setting up the disciples in such a way that it is absolutely clear when the day is over that it is not their hands or their faith or even their willingness that is going to pull this off. It was just the hands and ability of Jesus. Last group. And I think this is one of those ones that kind of frustrates me. I think about this crowd, right? This crowd of people, and this is probably some of the same crowd that was there at the crucifixion or Jesus' trial, or maybe they were there and heard about the resurrection. Maybe some of these young guys were there when Peter preached at Pentecost. Oh, I've seen Peter before. He was there when we were out in the desert and Jesus multiplied food, whatever it was. All of this imagery of Jesus taking the bread, breaking it, and blessing it, and then giving it is gospel. It is the gospel. God gives us his only son. He breaks his only son on the cross. He blesses the people with it, and he continues to give to us through the hands of Jesus and the power of the resurrection. So the question I have for you today, as we look at this from this perspective, is, who are you in the story? Are you the frustrated disciple with a scarcity mindset? I love Jesus, I'm following Jesus, I've seen Jesus work, but I got my own things going on right now. John the Baptist died. I really liked him. I wanted to come here and rest. I wanted this to be a season of rest, and I don't want to worry about everyone else's issues right now. And plus, there's just not enough to go around. Are you frustrated with what you don't have? Or is it possible that you're one of the zealots? You're one of the young guys who's there, and you're excited because this guy, limitless potential, this could be really amazing, this could be wonderful, but he doesn't give you what you thought he was going to give you. You thought Jesus is going to show up, and he's going to give me everything I need. He's going to lead us in this insurrection. We're going to take up arms. He's dividing us up into quads and quadrants and legions, and we're going to go to Rome, or we're going to take back what is ours. And then Jesus says, okay, everybody sit down, and he hands me a piece of bread. I don't want you to hand me a piece of bread. I want you to hop on that white horse and take us to Rome. I want you to fulfill all of my hopes and my dreams, all of my ambition, all the things that I want. Sitting in the grass, I imagine a teenage zealot. He's heard of this Jesus. He's excited about the potential of what Jesus stands for, what he is capable of, what he could pull off. Jesus tells him to sit, and he's like, okay, we'll sit, and the cool blades of grass are all around his feet, and somebody finally hands him a piece of bread and some fish, and he eats it, and he's full, and he's satisfied, and he begins to calm down, and then Jesus goes off to pray on the mountainside. A Few months later, there's Jesus again, but this time he's on trial, and Pilate comes out and says, hey, do you want me to release Jesus or Barabbas? Well, I met Jesus, and he got us all riled up, thinking we were going to go to Rome and take back what is ours, and Barabbas, he's a true zealot. He would die for his country. He would die for his people, so give me Barabbas. Sitting out there on the hillside at Golgotha, watching Jesus being crucified, saying, man, this is what you get when you aren't willing to go to the furthest extent to take back what is yours. And then Jesus breathes his last, and the sky grows dark, and the earth shakes, and something inside of you goes, oh, something's different about him. The rumors start to spread. Jesus is alive. It's 3 days later. The tomb has been emptied. Jesus is appearing all over the place to people, and they're starting to wonder, I've eaten the food of this man. I've tasted and seen his goodness. I've seen things that couldn't be come from his very hands. Maybe Jesus isn't the leader that I wanted, but it's quite possible that Jesus is perhaps the leader that I needed. Maybe Jesus is not the zealot that I desired in my heart, but maybe Jesus carries the potential to give a life that I couldn't put together on my own. Maybe it's not about taking back what's mine, taking over a kingdom that's already been established. Maybe Jesus is onto something. And being one of those young zealots with all those thoughts running through your mind, and one day you're in Jerusalem and it's Passover, and there's Peter, the disciple. I've seen him. He handed me bread in the middle of that field. I've seen this man. What is he talking about? Jesus is alive. He did this for us. A new kingdom is breaking through. I wonder if one of the 5,000 young men on the hillside happened to be one of the 3,000 young men who gave their lives to Jesus at Pentecost. Like full circle, I wonder what I would be in this story. Because I'm not an ancient Jew, but I'm an American, and there's a bunch of things I want from my country that I'm not getting. Like, you can't even go to the gas pumps right now without complaining about something politically, right? Like, how many things in my life? I want this for my kids. I want this for my school. I want this for my community. I want this. I just wanted to pave that road. It's brutal. Like, whatever it is that I want, how many things? I just want to get here financially. I just want to achieve this socially. I want to whatever. And you fill in your blanks. You're desperate and you're zealous. And some of the things that we're desperate and zealous for are good. I want to be a good dad, a good mom, a successful leader, a good pastor. And we get so enthralled in what we want that it's quite possible that we'll turn to the wrong things to achieve them. That we could be the guys, proverbially, in the crowd going, give me Barabbas. Why? Because Barabbas can give me what I want right now. And Jesus is talking about this kingdom down the road, and I just simply don't have time for that. I don't have the patience for that. And quite honestly, as I look at what I have in my hands, like the disciples did, it's just not going to do. You ever felt that way? Maybe it's emotionally. Maybe it's financially. Like, I don't have it. Like, I have a little, I've assessed it, I've done the math, it's not going to work. I thought about that even financially. My kids are getting bigger, they're growing like weeds, and all I see is college tuition. You know, they're like 5, 6, and 3, and I'm like, college. How are we going to pull this off? You all better get great grades and like athletic scholarships, because this is stressing me out. And as I'm reading this passage, as I'm asking Jesus, am I the zealot? Is there things that I want that you're trying to give me something else? You're trying to give me life. You're trying to give me bread. You're trying to teach me how to live and how to walk like you and work like you. And here I am crying out for something more. I want that insurrection. I want that upbringing. I want to go charge the Jerusalem and take back what is mine. Is that me? And then, okay, Jesus, if that isn't me, then I'm definitely the disciples. I'm definitely the guy looking at what I have and going, it's just not enough. I just felt the Spirit gently leading me through this passage going, hey, Ray, you're both guilty. Not always, but sometimes. And right now, you're looking at what little you have. And if I can take what little I had and feed 5,000, then I can take your little that you have and feed your little family of 5, and it's going to be okay. And what you have is exactly enough. When I give all of what I have to Jesus, he can break, bless, and multiply it. Like whether it's your gift set or your money or your ability, maybe it's just your energy level. As a parent, our kids didn't sleep well last night. So just even as a parent, just, okay, Jesus, I have this little energy. I'm going to give it to you. And he's like, okay, great. I'm going to break it, bless it. I'm going to multiply it. And sometimes I get frustrated in the breaking. But breaking is almost always in the hands of Jesus followed by blessing. I get frustrated like, oh, this hurts. Oh, that wasn't fun. Or that didn't feel good. Or this is crushing. But it's in the breaking that blessing is birthed. In those moments. So my question to you is, who are you in this story, and what is your estimation of Jesus? Are you the zealot, and do you think that Jesus should just raise up arms and fulfill all your hopes and dreams, or are you willing to take the bread that he has to offer and potentially change your heart? Are you the disciple who's looking at what you have in your hands and going, this just isn't enough, we got to change plans, Jesus, you need to do what you do. This isn't going to work, Jesus, whatever your situation, whatever your circumstance. And Jesus is going, just give me what you have. Just give it to me today. What is your estimation of who Jesus is? Think of that scene in The Office where Michael's boss tells him, like, I underestimated you. And he says, well, maybe next time you'll estimate me. Like, maybe next time. I feel like Jesus, often I assess my situation and I go, Jesus, it's just not going to work. You're going to have to do a miracle. And he's like, okay, give me what you got. I'll do the miracle. Jesus, we want to take back Jerusalem. We want to take back Palestine. We're tired of these Romans. We're tired of being told what to do. You got to come into my hopes, my dreams, and my ambitions and do your thing. He's like, no. I'm not going to lead you in the way of death and of bloodshed. I'm going to lead you in the way of life. Here, sit down on the grass and have some bread. Jesus knows exactly how to calm down a human being. Sit down and eat, right? Sit down and eat something. Next time you're frustrated or anxious, or you just had a really tough day, or you're looking at the numbers, just sit down on your kitchen table and have a piece of bread. You'll feel so much better afterward. Not only physically, but hopefully it puts into perspective for us that when Jesus gives us bread, what he's trying to tell us is, I want to give you life. God, I pray for our church. I pray for our families, our homes, our jobs, and our schoolwork. Thank you for this summer. We know that there's just kind of this anxiety and tension beginning to build about kids going back to school and maybe, less traveling and more routine in the fall. God, I pray that as we're in that mode, that we would just see you. Maybe the hopes and dreams that we have, we just want you to come in and fulfill them for us and be what we want you to be. But would you give us the attunement to your spirit to know maybe you're trying to give us some bread right now, life-sustaining bread, life-giving. Maybe you're not the revolutionary leader that we want, but you are a better king than we could ever have imagined. I pray for us following you. We're the disciples, and we just look down in our hands, and sometimes I feel like, how is it going to work? And we don't have enough, and this isn't possible. Would you gently ask us for what we have, break and bless it, so that we have stories to tell? For some of us, our lives are broken. Our hearts are broken, our emotions, our relationships. Would you follow up that brokenness with blessing? Would you be the better leader, the better king, the better savior, the better Moses for us? Thank you for finding us even in desolate places and giving us exactly what we need. Help us to look at our situations, not with a scarcity mindset, but with an understanding that with you, there's nothing that is impossible. There's no challenge we cannot overcome. Give us excitement for the future. Give us more moments of your kingdom in breaking into our lives, into our relationships, into our hearts. If you can feed 5,000, then you can certainly feed 5. And if everyone on that hillside could have left satisfied having eaten your bread, help us find those moments where you feed us and we find satisfaction too. In Jesus' name, everybody said together, amen. Okay, we didn't finish the book, but we got like 9 verses in. That's progress. That feels good. We love you guys. If you need to talk or prayer, come talk to us. And then make sure you're following us on Instagram or you're subscribed to the newsletter. We're going to put out some schedules for the rest of the summer and this fall this week. But grab some coffee and a donut and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.